Welcome back, everybody. These are the best horror films of 1987. Let's check out to see what films were scaring audiences worldwide. Were they slasher films, zombie films, alien films, monster films? You have to stay tuned, check out the video to see what releases were scaring everybody worldwide and in movie theaters and on cable TV and on TV stations. So let's go ahead and check out the best horror films. This is all the horror This is all the horror films, the best horror films that came out in 1987. So picture it, all right? Let me know below before we begin if there's any films I may have left out. It may be impossible or improbable, but I may have left out a film or two. So don't come for me if, Tony, you forgot this film. Tony, what about this film? No. I have all the... All right, let's check out the best horror films of 1987. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. I love this film. A psychiatrist familiar with knife-wielding demon dreams, Freddy Krueger helps teens at a mental hospital battle the killer who is invading them in their dreams. Featuring Heather Langenkamp. A Return to Salem's Lot. I love it. A man and his son vacation to the quiet vampire-populated town of Salem's Lot. Michael Moriarty, Samuel Fuller, and Andrew Dugan. Very creepy and scary. Enigma. The spirit of a comatose teenage girl possesses the body of a newcomer to her girls' boarding school to enact bloody revenge against the elitist, lingerie-clad co-eds responsible for her condition. Killer Workout. Slasher horror. 2 years ago, a young woman named Valerie was burned after entering a tanning salon. Now her twin sister Rhonda runs a local gym where all of a sudden, people are being murdered. I love it. I love revenge films. Alien Predator. Here we go with the aliens. 3 American friends traveling through Spain get stuck in a remote town where something very dangerous is changing the town's people. Alien Predator. I love it. This is 1987, folks. Angel Heart. In 1955 New Orleans, small-time private investigator Harry Angel is hired by a man who calls himself Louis Cypher to track down a singer named Johnny Favorite. But the investigation takes an unexpected and somber turn. Anguish. A controlling mother uses telepathic powers to send her middle-aged son on a killing spree. Dark comedy, slasher horror, and horror. Anguish. Zelda Rubinstein and Michael Lerner. Bad Taste. The population of a small town disappears and is replaced by aliens that chase human flesh for their intergalactic fast food chain. Body horror, dark comedy, Bad Taste. More alien movies. Bates Motel. Alex West, who roomed with the late Norman Bates at the state lunatic asylum, inherits the infamous Bates Motel after Norman Bates dies. B-horror, comedy, drama, and horror. Bay Cove. Young newlywed couple Jerry and Linda move out of the big city into a remote seacoast village, only to encounter a secret coven of witches who want them to join them or face the consequences. Bay Cove. Beaks, the movie. Vanessa, a television reporter covering a story of a farmer attacked by his chickens, discovers that this is a non-isolated incident. So we have killer chickens. Beaks. The Believers. Cal Jameson, a police psychologist, is forced to deal with a series of ritualistic murders and a malevolent cult. Crime, drama, horror, and mystery. Believers with Martin Sheen. Berserker. Slasher horror. 6 people renting a cabin in the woods of Utah run afoul of a legendary Viking warrior who dons the claws and mouth of a bear with no help in sight. Berserker. Billy the Kid and the Green Bay's Vampire. Cocky snooker player Billy the Kid faces 6-time world champion Maxwell in a grudge match with high stakes. The loser must retire from professional snooker forever. Blood Harvest. Jill, visiting home from college, arrives to find her parents missing and their home vandalized. Soon matters take a turn for the worse when she finds herself stalked and her friends disappearing one by one. Blood Harvest, slasher horror. Blood Lake, slasher horror. 6 teenagers are partying one weekend. One couple disappears only to be found brutally murdered. A bloodthirsty killer is stalking them. One by one, bodies begin to show up as they become prey to the vengeance-seeking maniac. I love these slasher films. Blood Sisters, slasher horror. 7 girls must spend the night in an old house, which once was a brothel, as part of initiation. Blood Sisters, I love it. Blood Diner, dark comedy. I love that movie poster. 2 brothers are entrusted by their uncle to uphold the ritualistic cannibalism of an ancient cult of Shatar. In order to do so, they have to prepare a feast of sacrifice for the resurrection. Blood Rage, slasher horror. A boy kills a man and accuses his twin brother of the murder, and then the innocent brother ends up institutionalized, while his psychotic twin goes free. 10 years later, the innocent twin escapes, which triggers his brother into killing again. Blood Hook, slasher horror. During a local fishing contest, people are being violently dragged into the lake and killed by a giant fishing hook. Terror Night, slasher horror. Lance Hayward, a silent movie star, appears as various characters, killing quite a handful of unfortunates using various weapons. Stars Alan Hale Jr. Bloody New Year. A group of friends take refuge in an island hotel that is decorated for New Year's. The problem is, it's early summer, and soon enough, even the walls themselves are striking out against them. Blue Monkey. Detective Jim Bishop and Dr. Rachel must find a way to stop a giant monstrous insect that's eating people. Blue Monkey. Horror and sci-fi. Body Count. Slasher horror. A group of teens are stalked and killed by a shaman at a cursed camping site. Body Count. I love these slasher films. Everybody loves slasher films. I'm sorry. Everybody loves slasher films. Brain Blast. A new drug is sweeping the streets of Sydney with devastating outcomes. Comedy, horror, sci-fi, and thriller. This takes place in Australia. Brain Blast. So if you like horror, check it out. Bride of Boogedy. A family with a great love for practical jokes is haunted by the family ghost, Mr. Boogedy. The Bride of Mr. Boogedy. This is a TV episode that aired April of 1987. Body Count. Again, if I just covered it, forgive me. A group of teens are stalked and killed by a shaman at a cursed camping site. Body Count. This is an Italian movie. Camping del Terror. Cannibal Hookers. As a sorority initiation, 2 girls have to pose as hookers. Then they turn into zombies and start killing and eating the locals. Comedy, crime, and horror. Cannibal Hookers. Cemetery Sisters. Sisters Joan and Leslie are no strangers to the dead. Having grown up around family mortuary business, they have a comfortable appreciation for that fact of life. Cemetery Sisters. Chillers. 5 passengers in a bus depot are waiting for a bus that is overdue. To pass the time, they start telling each other horror stories. Chillers. Horror, 1987. This movie is spooky. Contagion. Comedy and horror. A real estate agent is lured to a rundown mansion only to be trapped and tortured by ghosts. Contagion. This movie will not disappoint. Slaughterhouse. Slasher horror. The owner of a slaughterhouse facing foreclosure instructs his obese and mentally disabled son to go on a killing spree against the people who want to buy his property. So if you want to buy the property, kill them. Creepazoids. A group of survivors try to avoid the battles of World War III. When they try to escape to the Quiet Lands, they encounter something much more deadly. Creepazoids. Creepshow 2, Fantasy and Horror. 3 macabre tales from the latest issue of a boy's favorite comic book, dealing with a vengeful wood Native American, a monstrous blob in a lake, and an undying hitchhiker. Creepy Classics. Creepy Classics was a 1987 direct-to-video compilation of trailers for various horror and science fiction movies hosted by Vincent Price. We love Vincent Price. He was awesome. Criminally Insane 2, Slasher Horror. A severe decrease in funding forces a mental hospital to release mass murderer Ethel into a halfway house. Ethel is a psychotic and delusional and has a hefty appetite of killing. Dangerous Game. A computer expert and his friends manage to disable a department store's security system so they can rob it. But once inside, they find themselves stalked by a killer. I love it. Dangerous Game. Dark Age. A park ranger is tasked with dealing with a killer crocodile that appears to have a spiritual connection with the local Aborigines. Dark Age, Adventure and Horror. Deadly Daphne's Revenge. A young hitchhiker is picked up by 4 drunken hunters, one of whom rapes her. A tough prosecutor has all 4 of the men indicted for the crime, which results in a suicide and murder for hire plot. Deadly Love. Buddy and Anne elope, but Buddy is murdered. Anne uses black magic to summon Buddy, leading to suicide. Her niece inherits a haunted house. Deadly Love. Death House. A renegade federal agent uses a new drug to create an army of unbeatable warriors. Action, horror, and sci-fi. Death House. This movie is good. It's one of the best horror films of 1988, or 87 rather. Death Nurse. Murderous overweight nurse Edith and her brother run a medical clinic out of the suburban home. They take in patients, kill them, and continue to build the state for their care. Death Nurse. Stage Fright. Slasher Horror. A group of stage actors lock themselves in the theater for a rehearsal of their upcoming musical production, unaware that an escaped psychopath has sneaked into the theater with them. Stage Fright. Delirium. Slasher Horror. Models working for a nude magazine are being killed gruesomely. The murderer stages and photographs the victims' corpses, submitting the images for publication. Delirium. Demon of Paradise. Hunters become the hunted when illegal dynamite disturbs the age-old slumber of carnivorous lizardmen. Resort owner Angela joins forces to kill the lizard. Demon of Paradise. Dinner with a Vampire. A camera crew unearths a 1,000-year-old vampire from Mesopotamia. Years after his rise from the grave, the vampire becomes a famous horror film director and holds auditions for his upcoming film. Dr. Bloodbath. Slasher Horror. The story of Dr. Thorne, an abortionist who uses post-procedure house calls as opportunities to murder his patients. Dolls. I love Dolls. Featuring a dysfunctional family of 3 stopped by a mansion during a storm. Father, stepmother, and child. The child discovers that the elderly owners are magical toy makers and have a haunted collection of dolls. Doom Asylum. Slasher Horror. A horribly disfigured lawyer wrongfully pronounced dead after a terrible car accident is taken to an asylum for dissection, only to come back to life and kill. Epidemic. A director and screenwriter pen a script and, in the process, blur the line between fiction and reality. Epidemic, starring Alan DeWall and Ole Ernst, drama and horror. Evil Cat. Master Chong is the last of a large family whose members for centuries have protected the earth from a demonic cat with 9 lives. Action, comedy, and horror. Evil Cat. Evil Dead 2. Ash Williams, the lone survivor of an earlier onslaught of flesh-possessing spirits, holds up in a cabin with a group of strangers while the demons continue their attack. One of the best horror films of 1987. Evil Town. Young people passing through a small town discover that an insane doctor is conducting sinister experiments on the town's youth to combat the aging process. James Keach, Stacy Keach's brother. Evil Town. Faceless. Slasher horror. When model Barbara Hallen disappears in France, her father's private detective traces her steps to a private plastic surgery clinic run by Dr. Flamland. Funland. When a mob family takes over an amusement park after the owner dies under mysterious circumstances, the recently fired clown mascot seeks vengeance for the loss of his job. Forever Evil. The sole survivor of Backwoods Massacre investigates the incident with the help of a photographer and a police officer. Soon it becomes clear that they're up against nothing less than an ancient god. Forever Evil. Horror. Frenchman's Farm. An Australian woman's car breaks down in the country, and when she gets help, she's whisked back to time into 1944 and witnesses a murder. Frenchman's Farm. From a whisper to a scream. In a small Tennessee town, a historian relates 4 horror stories to a reporter. Vincent Price, Clu Gallagher, and Terry Kaiser. Next up we have is Backwoods. Karen and Jamie bike out to a remote wooden area for camping. Jamie saves a young girl's life with an emergency tracheotomy and a grateful father, Eben. But soon revenge takes place. Backwoods. Ghost Chase. In an old Hollywood mansion, the spirit of an old family retainer inhabits an old grandfather clock. When a movie company uses the mansion for a film, the spirits kill people one by one who disturb it. Ghost Fever. 2 policemen are sent on a routine assignment to serve an eviction notice. It becomes anything but run-of-the-mill when they become involved in the ghostly happenings. Featuring Sherman Hemsley. Ghost Fever. Ghost Riders. An outlaw gang hanged by a posse in the late 1880s comes back from the grave to terrorize the descendants of the posse's leader. Drama, horror, and western. Ghost Riders, featuring Billy Shaw. Graveyard Shift. A vampire who works as a taxi driver meets and romances a young woman who he turns into a fellow vamp, which prompts her jealous and estranged husband to try to kill them both. Graveyard Shift. Graveyard Disturbance. 5 young robbers spend a whole night in a dark catacomb to win a priceless treasure. They will have to fight against loss of ferocious zombies and vampires. Graveyard Disturbance. Very creepy movie. Hellraiser Classic. A woman discovers the newly resurrected, partially formed body of her brother-in-law and lover. She starts killing for him to revitalize his body and escape the demonic beings that are pursuing him after he escaped their underworld. House 2, the second story. The new owner of a sinister house gets involved with the reanimated corpses and demons searching for an ancient Aztec skull with magical powers. Air Gross and Royal Dano. The Howling 3. A female werewolf runs away from her family and falls in love with a man who works in the movie business, while a sociologist who studies these creatures is looking for proof of their existence. The Howling 3. I Married a Vampire. A young farm girl named Viola moves to the city to escape her abusive parents, but finds more people who take advantage of her, except of a stranger named Roseby, who falls in love and marries. I Was a Teenage Zombie. Teenage vigilantes kill a drug pusher only to have him return as a zombie. Parody, comedy, and horror. This movie will not disappoint. I love it. I love it. In a glass cage. A former Nazi child killer is confined in an iron lung inside an old mansion after a suicide attempt. His wife hires him full-time carer, a mysterious young man who is driven slowly mad. It's Alive 3, Island of Alive. The monster babies have been placed by court order on a deserted island so they can no longer kill people. But people visit the island and soon the killing starts. Jaws the Revenge. I love Jaws. I love all the Jaws movies. Chief Brody's widow believes that her family is deliberately being targeted by another shark in search of revenge. How stupid is she? She don't go in the water, man, bitch. Stay out of the water, bitch. Killing spree. A man suspects his wife of adultery and goes on a killing spree, eliminating all he believes are sleeping with her. But his victims don't stay dead. Killing spree. The Kindred. A geneticist takes his assistants to an old family home to locate the deadly product of his late mother's revolutionary research into rapid human evolution. Horror, sci-fi, and thriller. The Kindred. Lily Cat. The expendable crew of a corporate space vessel must stop a murderous shape-shifting alien organism that somehow got on board. Anime, action, animation, and horror. The Lost Boys. When a recently divorced mother and her two teenage boys move to a coastal town to stay with her father, it doesn't take long for the brothers to realize that the area is inhabited by vampires. The Lost Boys, one of the best films. Lucifer, slasher horror. A psychotic killer is embarked on a murder spree, and the authorities begin to suspect that they may have been sent from hell. Lucifer, or demon spirit. Mad Ron's previews from hell. Deranged projectionist Mad Ron, host Nick, and charismatic zombie Happy Goldsplat screen a collection of horror and exploitation trailers for a theater of the undead. Maniac Killer. A murderous cult kidnaps French prostitutes and hookers and sluts, tortures them to death to purify them of their evil ways. Maniac Killer. Master Blaster. A paintball tournament goes from a fun, exciting weekend to an exercise in survival when someone starts killing the competitors with a real gun and not using paintballs. Master Blaster. I love Master Blaster. Mind Killer. A lonely library clerk stumbles across a manuscript that he uses to develop psychic powers, which makes him irresistible to women. Soon his powers get out of control, just as they start showing up in his friends. Horror and sci-fi. Epitaph. A family must keep moving from town to town because the mother is a psychotic axe murderer who keeps flipping out on murdering people. Epitaph. So don't cross this woman. The Monster Squad. Everybody loves the Monster Squad. A group of 12-year-olds form a Universal Monster fan club called Monster Squad and have to attempt to save their hometown from Count Dracula and his monsters when they show up for real. Moon in Scorpio. I may have covered this, but slasher horror. Ex-soldiers on a yachting trip run into the ghosts of victims of a massacre. Slasher horror, drama, and horror. Moon in Scorpio. Munchies. We love munchies. A scientist discovers a strange little creature in a cave. The munchie is obviously of extraterrestrial origin, but what he doesn't know is the danger it represents. Munchies. Parody, slapstick, comedy, and horror. My Best Friend is a Vampire. After a sexual encounter with a beautiful client, a teenage delivery boy finds himself being turned into a vampire. My Best Friend is a Vampire. It's a scorcher. My Demon Lover. A homeless street musician becomes a demon when sexually aroused. Dark comedy, horror, and fantasy. Featuring Scott Valentine from Family Ties. Hey. Near Dark. A small-town farmer's son reluctantly joins a traveling group of vampires after he is bitten by a beautiful drifter. Near Dark. Contemporary Western. This movie is pretty good, creepy, and scary. Necropolis. Reincarnated satanic witch from New Amsterdam circa 1600s comes back to revive her cult members by sucking the life force out of people. Necropolis. Necromantic. A street sweeper who cleans up after grisly accidents brings home a full corpse for him and his wife to enjoy sexually, but is dismayed to see that his wife prefers the corpse over him. That's gross. Night vision. A stolen VCR enables whoever watches it to predict the future, but it also shows satanic rites and devil worship. Night vision. Horror. So if you like VCRs, you'll love this movie. Night screams. Slasher horror. A football star throws a party for his friends. Two insane killers escape from a nearby asylum on the same night and crash the party. How is there always... Who's going to live by an insane asylum? Nobody's going to live anywhere near an insane asylum. Night flyers. Professor hires a spaceship to get to the source of weird signals from deep space. Horror, mystery, sci-fi, and thriller. Again, no one's going to live by a nearby insane asylum. So that's already fake right there. Nightmare Sisters. 3 geeky college students who can't get a date organize a seance and become sex-starved vamps. Dark comedy, fantasy, and horror. Nightmare Sisters. Oh, I love it. I love it. Open house. Slasher horror. Someone's killing off nubile real estate agents. Slasher horror, horror, and thriller. Open house. I love it. They're killing realtors and visitors. Opera. A young opera singer is stalked by a deranged fan bent on killing the people associated with her to claim him for herself. Slasher horror opera. So this guy's being stalked. The Wicked. What happens when 2 rodeo men and a female hitchhiker go up against a vampire? Comedy, horror, and thriller. The Wicked. This is a Outback Vampires original title. The Outing. A group of high school students decide to stay in a natural museum after closing hours, but a newly acquired and mysterious lamp hiding a deadly force will turn the fun into horror. Plutonium Baby. Danny's mother was contaminated by radiation poisoning at the time of his birth. Years have passed, and Danny begins to go on a killing rampage. Oh, so now radiation makes him a killer? Is that what you're saying? Predator. I love Predator. Everybody loves Predator. A team of commandos on a mission in Central America jungle find themselves hunted by an extraterrestrial warrior. Everybody loves Predator and the Predator. Prince of Darkness. A group of graduate students and scientists uncover an ancient canister in an abandoned church. But when they open the container, they inadvertently unleash a strange liquid and an evil force on all humanity. Prison. The spirit of a long-dead prisoner returns from revenge, haunting the prisoner's new governor. How can people have to go on revenge? Why do people that die have to come back to life and start killing people? Are they mad because they're dead? You're dead. You're not supposed to know you're dead. Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. 30 years after her accidental death at her 1957 senior prom, the tortured spirit of prom queen Mary Lou Maloney returns to seek revenge. Again with the revenge. Psychos in love. A strip joint owner and manicurist find that they have many things in common, the foremost being that they are psychotic serial killers. Psychos in love. Redneck zombies. A barrel of radioactive waste is lost out in the woods. Some demented rednecks find it and use it as part of their still. Everyone who drinks the liquor they produce turns into zombies. Redneck zombies. Rest in pieces. A young married couple move into the wife's aunt's estate after inheriting the sprawling property. Soon, weird occurrences begin to happen around the house, and they start to suspect the tenants are responsible. Rest in pieces. Retribution. A maniac depressive artist survives a suicidal fall only to be possessed by a murder gangster who uses the artist to seek vengeance on those that ended his life. Again with the revenge killings. I love revenge. Return to horror high. Look at that poster. In the early 1980s, a series of gruesome murders occurred at Crippen High School. A few years later, a film crew uses the now abandoned Crippen High School as a set for a film. The Revenge of the Living Dead Girls. A chemical company manager and his secretary are both involved in corruption, sabotage, and blackmail, which leads to toxic waste turning corpses into killer zombies. We love it. Rock and roll nightmare. At a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, a hopeful hair metal band seeking inspiration to a record to record their upcoming new LP will soon find themselves in a furious confrontation with the Prince of Darkness. Scared Stiff. Strange visions come to haunt a singer when she, her son, and her psychiatrist turned boyfriend move into an old colonial house that is haunted by the ghost of a ruthless slave owner. Scorched Heat. The ghost of a man murdered by two kids comes back to haunt them. Horror. Scorched Earth will not disappoint. I love it. We love revenge films. What's with all these revenge films? I love it. Shallow Grave. When four young college girls stumble upon a murder, they find themselves targeted by a killer who will stop at nothing to silence them. You better stay quiet or I will kill you, is what they're saying. Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. I love it. Slasher horror. The now adult Ricky talks to a psychiatrist about how he became a murderer after his brother Billy died, which leads back to Mother Superior. Slumber Party Massacre 2. Courtney Bates, the younger sister of Mallory, and her friends go to a condo for the weekend getaway, but Courtney can't get rid of the haunting feeling that a supernatural rockabilly driller killer is coming to murder them all. Soul Tangler. A mad scientist named Anton invents a drug that can free the soul of the user and allow them to possess the bodies of corpses. Gross. That's pretty gross. Specters. A U.S. professor of archaeology and his young research team uncover a sealed ancient pagan tomb under the mausoleum of real estate Roman Emperor Domitian. Specters. Splatter Farm. Slasher horror. Two young twins are sent to spend time at their aunt's farm, but nobody knows that the aunt's handyman is a psycho serial killer who dismembers his victims. Stage fright. I think I already covered stage fright. We're going to cover it again. But look at that movie poster. A group of young stage actors lock themselves up in a theater, but a killer is also trapped and kills them. The Stepfather. This was really, really good. After murdering his entire family, a man marries a widow with a teenage daughter in another town and prepares to do it all over again and again and again. So he marries a family, sets up shop, and then kills them. Street Trash. A liquor store owner sells alcoholic beverages to homeless people, unaware of what the bottles actually contain. Toxic brew. Street trash. So it's infected. Tales from the Quad Dead Zone. Actress Shirley Jones returns from director Chester Novel's to star in the next camcorder opus. Tales from the Quad Dead Storm is horror at its best. Uncle Silas. Maud, a lonely, sensitive girl, is sent to stay with her Uncle Silas, a charismatic rogue who stands to inherit the family fortune. Drama, mystery, thriller, and horror. Uncle Silas. The Stay Awake. The ghost of a serial killer executed for murdering students at a Catholic girls' school returns to the school to take revenge of the current student body. Again, they're coming back for revenge. I love it. The Curse. When a meteorite lands near his family's farm during a storm in Tennessee, the son of a struggling farmer believes it's connected to strange plague-like events. The Curse. Horror and sci-fi, featuring Will Wheaton. The Gate. Kids left home alone accidentally unleash a horde of malevolent demons from a mysterious hole in their suburban backyard. The Gate, featuring Steven Dorff. The majorettes. Slasher horror. A high school majorettes are being methodically killed by a mysterious masked figure. Slasher horror. The majorettes. Tilbury. In the year 1940, when there were British forces in Iceland, a country boy goes to Reykjavik to work for the army. Folk horror, drama, horror, and war. Tilbury. He starts to suspect that the soldier, instead of being an officer, is a zombie. Canines of the Caribbean. A woman and her 2 children are accidentally cryopreserved and awaken at a time when apes dominate the planet. Canines of the Caribbean. Time sweep. A group of people enter an old movie studio and are suddenly transported through time, featuring Kevin Brief. Time sweep. This movie is creepy and good. Twisted Nightmare. Slasher horror. Group of teens visits childhood summer camp. Members start vanishing. Members start vanishing one by one. I love it. Until death. A man and woman murder the woman's husband and 6 years later must now contend with her son's nightmares and the arrival of a stranger who might know something about the case. Until death. Was there a witness back then? Vampire Nights. Kenny is obsessed with vampires, so much so that he joins the ranks of the Vampire Nights fan club. Vampire Nights. Comedy and horror. Vampire's Breakfast. A newspaper reporter stumbles upon a vampire living in contemporary Hong Kong. Comedy, horror, and mystery. Vampire's Breakfast. What do you think his breakfast is going to be? Blood. Video violence. If you like VHS films, you'll love this movie. A husband and wife open a video store in a new town and come to find out that the locals only rent horror films and the occasional XXXer and make their own snuff videos. The Video Dead. A family takes delivery of a new television set, unaware that it is the gateway by which killer zombies enter the world. The Video Dead. I love it. I think I saw this. It's pretty good, actually. Zombie High. A college freshman begins to notice that students at her new high school are losing their individuality. She discovers that the faculty are operating on the students' brains to make them docile and productive. Comedy and horror. Lastly, we have is Anak ni Zuma. In this sequel, Zuma, the serpent man monster, comes back with a vengeance, and this time he is with his son, who is just as vicious. Zuma. Anak ni Zuma. Those were the best horror films. Those were all the horror films that were released in the year 1987. Was that a good year for you? What do you remember of 1987? But there were a lot of films in 1987, a lot more zombie films and alien films than there were slasher films. But we had a good dose of slasher films, alien films, and much more zombie films. I think with the hit of zombie movies in the mid-80s, you're starting to see more zombie films come out. So those were the best horror films of 1987. Let me know if there are any movies I may have left out. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you for your support. You're watching Yesteryear TV. I'll see you all in the next video, which should be the best horror films of 1988. Thank you everybody. Thank you all, and I'll see you all soon.